makes most women start a business? Is it passion, money, or freedom? Welcome to Female Founders, the podcast that takes you behind the scene with women who are founders and CEOs to help you start and scale a successful business of your own. I am your host, Cecilia Dahl.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Female Founders. In today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Cecilia Dahl. Cecilia, an expert in remote work, started the Remote Leadership Lab to change how we work together from afar. She built a 100 million business while living on a sailboat, showing how teamwork can happen anywhere. Her advice helps leaders lead better in the online world, making work easier and more connected. Good morning, Cecilia. Thank you so much for giving me that opportunity to have this conversation with you today. Can you share the story of your transition from a global tour operator buyer to a leader in remote work and leadership?
Yes. Hi. First of all, Nagilia, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I had a long career working in the travel industry as a buyer and working for wholesale tour operators. And it was back in the early 2000s when I realized that I really had a fire inside of me to become an entrepreneur, and I wanted to start my own business. I then co-founded a company called Smart Destinations. And what we did at Smart Destinations, this was in the travel space, so something that was very much in my comfort zone. We invented and patented a programmable ticketing system that allowed customers who were traveling in different destinations to have easy and flexible access to the attractions in those destinations. So that business where we built this programmable ticketing platform and got partnerships with all of the attractions, we grew that from a very small startup when I was living on my sailboat all the way to $100 million in revenue. And the business eventually sold. Today, I'm no longer part of the business, but it still exists today as GoCity, which is one of the largest ticketing platforms available for tourists. So that journey in itself, for me, was a great experience in leadership and in terms of understanding how to lead teams and build teams. And in particular, because we at one point went very much remote in order to cut our costs and to be able to scale. And this was well before remote teams became a thing. Yeah. So after leaving Smart Destinations back then, I started another partnership still in the travel space, which is ongoing today. This is a partnership called Travelytic, where I'm partnered with a group of data scientists who are based in London. And what we do is analytics, pricing strategy, and competitive market intelligence for tour operators. And this was a growing, thriving remote business. We worked across the ocean, from the Atlantic, across the Atlantic, they're all the way over in London. And we built it, and it was a thriving, it still is, but a thriving business that had a bit of a pause when the pandemic came upon it. Because, of course, we were fundamentally working in the travel space, and the travel industry more or less shut down during the pandemic. So there wasn't really a need for any pricing strategy. What I realized during that time, because of my career being on the road, because of building Smart Destinations with my remote teams, because of working on Travelytic being remotely, I had a very strong understanding of how to adapt in remote work environments. And this became all of a sudden headline news for the world, right? That people were now working remotely and struggling. And the thing that changed is not that remote work became a thing. It's not that remote work was invented during the pandemic, but the number of roles that were suddenly compatible with remote work and the number of roles that leaders had to manage remotely greatly expanded. So leaders who weren't comfortable working with remote teams now had to learn new skills and understand how leadership is transforming in a remote environment. And that's where I came to found the Remote Leadership Lab. And that is one of my key projects, my passion project that I'm working on now. It's my baby. It's my baby, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it because the future is with remote and flexible work, hybrid and remote. And it necessitates new training and new skills for leaders because leadership can't be the same in a remote and hybrid environment as it was when we all worked in co-located spaces.
Yes. But you know what's great about it, Cecilia, is the fact that you have been doing that for a very long time, starting with the first company in general. So it's like it's something you already know. It's not you trying to adapt into it to teach something to someone, but it's something you already know that you can pass on to leaders on how to do it better and how to adapt to it.
Right, absolutely. I have walked a million miles in the shoes of every remote leader. I have felt the pain and I have experienced the benefits of having a remote team. And I bring a lot of my own experiences. And now, of course, there are so many more opportunities because technology has advanced, right? So it's the technology that allows us to now have expanded remote roles, but it's really the people, the skills that we have with our people in remote environments that enable us to make those remote teams super efficient, super innovative, creative, and keep them engaged. And that's something that I know firsthand, and certainly working with my clients, when I hear them telling me their challenges, it resonates with me, and I can certainly help, obviously, because I've been there. And I don't want anybody to have to reinvent the wheel. So we work through this together to be better, faster in a remote work environment.
So with the remote leadership lab, like you say, you focus on big challenges of leading remote teams. Can you tell us a little bit more about it and what type of services the company offers?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the biggest challenges that we have with remote teams, and everybody feels it, right? Gallup has been studying engagement on all teams for 50 years, right? And suddenly what we're hearing now as people are remote is engagement is a problem, engagement is a problem. Well, the reality is that engagement has always been a problem, but certainly being remote, there's an added layer of complexity, right? So first thing we tackle when I start to work with a company, whether it's just a single workshop or whether it's a long engagement to do the full remote leadership lab, is how do we get these teams engaged, right? I have an example. I actually had lunch with a really good friend of mine not so long ago. She works remotely for a big insurance company doing data entry. And every morning she gets her list of data and she works for multiple different branches. And she has to do the data entry and make sure that all of the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And as we were speaking at I think it was lunch or dinner, she said, you know, some of these branch managers, I don't think they really care about their customers. And so I get my data in the morning and I just sort of plug it in and send it off. But I've got this one guy, Joe. Joe has a branch in Florida, on the west coast of Florida, and he's on a mission. He's on a mission to make sure that his customers have the best insurance experience they can have. And I respect that so much. And he makes me feel like I'm part of his team. He recognizes me. He listens to me. So when I get my work in the morning, I get everybody else's stuff out of the way real quick, and I make sure that I get Joe's stuff done really well. I make sure that everything's in perfectly, and I give him that extra effort because I like where he's going with his business, and I'm proud to be a part of that team. And it occurred to me as I was talking to her, we have one person working for one company, doing one job, and she's simultaneously completely checked out and completely engaged. And the difference is not in her effort and her work. The difference really is in the leadership that she's getting from those different branch managers that she's working for. And that's really why we start. The first place we have to start is, rather than pointing fingers outwards and thinking and assuming that remote workers aren't engaged, leaders need to look internally. How do I inspire my team? How do I make them feel connected to the mission that I'm working on? Because I can guarantee you that all of those other branch managers care about their customers. That message isn't getting down to my friend. So the fact that we are having trouble engaging teams in person is scary enough. It costs companies about $500 billion a year per engagement. When you then relate that to remote teams, what leaders need to understand is there are new skills, and leaders at every layer of management, whether you're the highest level or the lowest level manager, all those leaders have to know how to engage their teams and keep them connected. And that's what we do in my workshops. We do it at my remote leadership lab, and that's how I coach my clients to start. And then we start layering other skills on top of that.
So now let's say that we're going to pick Microsoft as an example. Let's say Microsoft hiring you to come in and to work with the remote team. How does exactly the process start?
Well, the process typically starts with a survey, right? Of where are people at? What is the starting point for this group, right? So we try to understand not only from the leader's perspective, but also from the team employee's perspective. How connected are they? What's working for them in their remote environment and what might not be working? What kinds of things can we consider as we go through the process? The Remote Leadership Lab program that I have, while it has both workshops and a full program, is highly customized. And the reason for that is there really isn't a cookie cutter solution for every team. Every team is different. They have different levels and layers of remote workers. They have different cultural diversity aspects to them. They have different tools in place. And so we always start with that baseline understanding and discussions with the team about where are their opportunities, where are the pain points, but also what's really working for you now. And then we go ahead and craft custom programs that can bring it all together and really take that team to a level where high performance is the norm and high engagement is the norm, and they're consistently beating their goals and achieving their goals.
So do you only work with the leaders or you also engage with the entire team?
Well, this is a program, the Remote Leadership Lab is a program that is designed to work with the leaders, right? Because it does start with the leaders to understand how they need to adjust and develop new skills in order to support their remote teams now. When we're doing that initial survey, we certainly engage in conversations and dialogues, or more like surveys with some of the team to get a baseline for where we start and what's working. The program itself is really focused on leaders of remote teams.
And now I understand why you work with the survey also goes to the teams, because I'm guessing you wanna what they're going to say about that leader, what they have to say about the company and different option that can help you to create a package for that company.
Yeah, you can really uncover a lot of things in an anonymous survey, very good things and positive things about how things are working, but you can also understand, are the tools the right tools that you need for collaboration? Sometimes when people are remote, they don't always have a voice, or their voice isn't heard or amplified in the same way that it can be in a co-located space. And oftentimes people are nervous about speaking up or sharing on that certain tools aren't working. So it's a great way to get in and really assess what is the situation before we get started. What's the baseline? Where are we with everyone on the team, and satisfaction levels with the tools and the leadership as well. I had a dialogue. I was at the dog park the other day, actually speaking with a nurse who works remotely. And I was telling her about my engagement, workshop, and how I'm running that with a corporate event that's coming up. And she said, wow, I really am not engaged with my job. I used to love my job, but I feel like I can't communicate well with my leader. Every time we talk on the phone, it's okay. And then there's emails that cross, and I feel like we're just disconnected on all of the emails. And, I've just given up on trying to fix it. I just come in every day and I do my job, and I'm not going to go any further than that. In a remote environment, or actually in any environment, and this is through those Gallup studies that they've been doing for decades, a single toxic employee, a single employee who has a bad attitude, can cost a company up to $12,000 a year. So you really want leaders at every level to understand why it's so important to have these new skills, right? And what's happened traditionally, and in the case of my friend at the dog park, whose boss was, promoted because she's really good at her job, and so therefore you become a supervisor, and therefore you become a manager, is she was thinking all the time about the tasks that she knew how to tell people, to do, or coach people to do correctly. Management of tasks is not the same as leadership of people. And too often, people are elevated into leadership roles without that extra bit of training. And when you're in a remote environment, it's really critical that every leader who gets promoted to supervisor, manager, or whatever, that they not only understand what tasks have to be done, but that they also understand how to lead the people, how to keep them engaged, how to communicate with different types of people. And that's what's going to power up that remote team to be efficient and to be high performing.
So from what I'm hearing from you, if you are planning on promoting your staff to a leadership level, it's better to get real training so that staff can understand how to lead, not just to manage tasks, but able to lead people and to help the company grow.
It's critical. It's critical in remote environments that leaders at every level of the organization have leadership skills, not just management skills, management of tasks, that they have leadership skills and that they understand fundamentally how critical it is to communicate properly, engage with their team, and keep everything together. Going back to some of these studies that have been done on engagement on teams, when you look at the companies that have the lowest level of engagement all the way up to the companies that have the highest level of engagement, the delta between the two, 70% of that is down to a person's direct manager or supervisor. So think about that when you're working in an organization. If you're in a co-located space, you're very close oftentimes to senior management or senior leaders, and you can't help but get the buzz and the passion, and here's where we're going, and this is the mission of the organization. As a company grows and people become more and more dispersed, and you stretch that connection out, that feeling of inspiration, that feeling of connectedness to the organization just gets stretched like, I think of it like an elastic or like silly putty. And if leaders at every level of the organization don't understand how to make those connections strong, you'll lose the people out in the periphery and they'll become isolated and they won't be performing optimally, and it will not be a highly productive team.
And also that's the time that you might have a great employee, but the employee might start looking elsewhere for something better. Like example, when you talk about the nurse and you talk about the insurance on the girl with the insurance company, eventually they will burn out, feel like, okay, this is not for me. I need to find something better.
Right, right. People want to have a purpose beyond a paycheck to show up for work, right? You want to give them a reason to be there that's more than just the tasks that they're doing every day, or they will start to look. And that's key. The wonderful thing about remote work and the remote work environment is that companies now have access to a global talent pool. They can have incredible talent, and people who have strong skills and the ability to deliver will be attracted to companies who can also give them that work-life benefit, or that they don't have to commute, right? But to keep them, to attract them and then retain them, you also have to create a culture where everyone feels part of something bigger than themselves, right? And I was reading a post on my LinkedIn profile. A former colleague of mine works in a remote environment and had been at a team meeting, and he was at the airport and he started to write, I'm so excited. He posted on his LinkedIn page, being part of this company is like nothing else. We're like unified at a level that I can't even describe. It's embedded in each of our DNAs, whether you work in sales or operations or customer service. We all have a role to play, and we are changing the world through travel. He worked for a travel company. And when I read this, I thought, wow, this man is inspired to be at this company because he feels like he knows what his role is, but he also appreciates what everyone else's role is, and he sees what they're all doing together, how they're all working together to accomplish something bigger than just a paycheck every day. So it's really important to understand that element of it as well, and not to just consider your remote employees people who are out there punching in, their work and being gone at the end of the day. They're part of a team, critical part of a team.
That's true. And then if you could grow the company alone, why would you hire in the first place, right? You could just be a solopreneur or for your entire year, stay where you are. For your entire time, you stay where you are, you never grow. The purpose you hiring in the first place is because you want to grow. And who's going to make you grow is the employees, is the leaders. Right. So you have to care for them. You have to give them the tools and the things that they need to grow with the company. For me, I look at it, if the company is growing and the staff is not, they stay where the others, that's a big problem.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. 100%. As the company grows, and especially in remote environments, you want people to see opportunity. And especially, this is another really key piece of Remote Leadership Lab is understanding for each of the people on your team, what is their desire? What is their growth path? And how do you show them a way, right? Show them that you're supporting their development and their growth. Because when you give it to them, they are going to give it back to you in spades. It's really important to nurture those relationships of your team because they are the essence of the company. They are what customers are going to attach to, and how efficient and productive you're going to be is going to be dependent on how well they understand your commitment to their own development and their connection to the mission and vision of the organization.
I like what you just said. I like that because if you take the time to know where they want to go, what they are looking for in their lives, you can create the space for them within the company so they can continue supporting that company to grow even higher. So I like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And even, one of the best ways to build trust and community and cohesion on a remote team is for leaders to create opportunities for people on these remote teams to collaborate together, right? Because when you work together, there's obviously people do things like Zoom trivia or even, lunch hour pizzas, and we get together on a Zoom and all that. But when you as a leader can create opportunities for people to collaborate and use their skills together to achieve a goal to benefit the organization, they're going to feel really good about it. They're going to have the opportunity to work together and build trust. And you can harvest some of those untapped skills that are out there with the team, and people get to show what they're capable of, and they feel really good about contributing in that way. It's one of the best tips I have for remote leaders. Create opportunities for people to collaborate so that they can make that connection and build trust.
And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised to find how talented they are, actually.
100%. Yep. Because a lot of times people have other passions, other skills, and they love to contribute and perform. People want to do well. Well, and especially when it's recognized. That's the other thing. You have to come back and recognize collaboration, effort, achievements, and celebrate all of that with your team.
So now, as a best-selling author and speaker, what core message do you hope to impart to your audience about remote work and leadership?
Leadership is changing. Leadership is changing as we see the world evolve, right? We see that more and more teams are either remote or hybrid. You simply cannot lead teams the same way we always have when they were co-located. And leaders at every level of management need to understand that and need to develop leadership skills that will help them evolve with the workforce.
So now let's talk a little bit about your book, because you are a best-selling author. What is the book about?
Yeah, I have two books, actually. I have a book that is an international bestseller called The Great Leadership Awakening, which is a collection of stories from women leaders, our own leadership stories, a wonderful collection of stories. And I also have a book called Unlocking the Secrets of Remote Leadership. And that is a book I wrote with my co-author, Catherine Brand. And that really focuses on the tactics of leadership and the fundamentals of building and supporting and optimizing a remote team.
So now, but is it you wrote that book for the leaders themselves, or you wrote that for anyone that's looking to get to a leadership position?
The book itself is really about leadership skills, but it's definitely a nice tool for anyone who's looking to get into a leadership position. And anytime you're looking to grow or develop, I would suggest for anyone out there, especially where there's such a shift in what's going on with leadership now, invest some time and understand what you're getting yourself into as you seek these new leadership roles and develop those skills. That can also put you in a position to be more successful when you do get that promotion, so that you can achieve a greater cohesion and productivity and engagement levels with your team right away. If you take the initiative, the book can certainly help anyone who's looking to grow into leadership, or anyone who's transitioning to from a leadership role in a co-located space, but now is remote. So it's a not just for brand new leaders, it's for leaders who have maybe just transitioned from being co-located to remote.
Or even a leader that's already been working remote, but things are not doing too well for you. You might want to learn some new skills.
That's true too. It is a struggle. And believe me, I walked a mile in those shoes too. When we went remote with Smart Destinations, and I started to realize, things were kind of unraveling. Communication was going awry, and people were having conflicts, and we would have meetings and we thought we had things resolved, and then only to find out later, oh, there were different perspectives there. So you could be in a situation where you are leading a remote team and certain things are going great, but other things are struggling. And this is a great book for that as well.
What skills do you believe are most important for fostering productivity and a strong team culture?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say first and foremost, for a leader to be able to inspire their team is one of the best skills you can bring to the table to create a productive remote team. And what I tell people who participate in my course is that motivating people and inspiring them are two different things, two different skill sets. When you motivate someone, you put a target in front of them, and it's more of a short term, if you achieve this, this is what's going to happen. When you inspire someone, you're really reaching deeper. You're showing them their greatness. You're letting them know how valuable they are for your team. And, if you can inspire someone to want to be better, to want to contribute because you're showing them how important they are and you're showing them their own greatness, you're going to get your team to perform at a different level. So I would say focusing on becoming an inspirational leader is foundational. And then beyond that, we look at other skills. Of course, communication, right? Communication is super critical on remote teams. It's a very complicated skill, something that I look back and I remember that commercial for a game called Othello, which was a board game when I was young growing up, and they would always say, takes a moment to learn, but a lifetime to master. And I think about communication in the same way, right? We're born to communicate, but doing it well and being good at it is something that it takes us a lifetime to master. And what I tell people is, first and foremost, when you're learning to communicate, learn to listen. Learn to listen to understand, right? And hear what people are saying and take it in. That's the first fundamental of it, right? Is learning to listen and then asking deep questions for a really good understanding, right? And somebody had asked me in the Remote Leadership Lab just a couple of weeks ago, how can I become a person who communicates well with everyone? And of course, that's a really big question, right? And there are certain people who are super communicators. But what I said to her was, as a first step, learn to listen and learn to ask deep questions that pull really important information out. Not just, what happened here, but something deeper, like, help me understand why you took this approach to how we got here, right? Ask someone to really fill in the blanks and then listen. And of course, you have to respond with respect and appreciate other people's communication styles, especially when you're on diverse teams. But 100% adopt a good listening protocol and learn how to actively listen.
But based on your extensive experience, how do you see the landscape of remote work evolving in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I see it only expanding, right? I think that technology has opened the floodgates for remote work, making remote work accessible to so many people. And people who have the highest skill set, that are super talented, that are going to be in demand, they are going to say, I want to work remotely. They're not the people who want to go into the office, They're going to want that work-life balance. They may want to live far outside of a city center and maybe not commute. So for companies to continue to attract and retain some of the top talent available, they're going to have to accommodate at least some degree of remote work. And that might be hybrid working. You still have these same challenges if you're hybrid or you're remote. So I see it only expanding. And as technology improves and internet access, high-speed internet access expands and expands, I think we're going to see this open up more and more over time. We're getting some resistance now, I see, from large corporations who believe that teams are not productive or teams are not creative. And again, I circle back to the fact that some of these large corporations are making an effort to just keep leadership the same and not train their leaders and just say, oh, it's not working. I think that's going to be something that's going to essentially shoot themselves in the foot. It's going to change because workers are going to demand that they be able to have hybrid workspace. And the other piece is organizations that have invested very heavily in commercial real estate and spent the money to build these big compounds where people are working. They don't want to see all of that go away to nothing because they spent a lot of money to build these office spaces. So of course they're going to start to demand that people come back in, but they will find that there will be a set of workers that are going to resist coming in. And if they want that talent, they're going to have to make the change.
In your view, what is the biggest challenge facing remote leaders today? And how can they overcome it?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges facing remote leaders today is the lack of understanding in the organization that leaders who are promoted into positions of leadership within a remote team at every level need to develop new skills. It takes a deep understanding of, how to build a remote workspace that balances autonomy with accountability. And what happened in the pandemic is that businesses were just suddenly remote, right? The reality is that if you want to transition to a remote team, it's a strategic decision. And it takes thoughtful planning and input and investment from the highest levels of leadership. And many companies weren't afforded that. So a lot of the leaders in remote teams today were just thrown into this pot of boiling water with no leadership skills, very limited tools. And it's hard to come back from that because now you want people to come back, but there's resistance. And then you have these leaders who have been handling it, but they maybe didn't have the right leadership skills. And there wasn't the right strategic planning in place. So tools are everywhere. So we're in this place right now where remote leaders are challenged by the fact that there was no planning at the outset of this big shift and no attention to the leadership skills that are required for these newly minted remote leaders to effectively manage their teams. And that's a big struggle for many.
You are right with that. You are. How can people reach out to you and the remote leadership lab team?
Yes, find me on ceciliadahl.com and book a meeting or grab me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn more than I'm on my website. So you can find me at the Remote Leadership Lab on LinkedIn. Follow me there. Connect with me. Find my LinkedIn profile. I'll share it with you, of course, so that you can post it with this link. And also find me on ceciliadahl.com.
Well, thank you so much, Cecilia. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience before I let you go today?
Thank you. I'm just really thrilled to be here, and I hope that everyone hears my message. Leadership is changing, and now is the time to embrace a new set of leadership skills that we can use to take your team from average remote to remarkable. And I'm looking forward to meeting all of you. It's time to change. It's time to change. Thank you so much, Nagilia.
Thank you for listening to Female Founders Podcast. That's it for this week's episode. Be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app or connect with us on womel.com so that you don't miss our next episode. See you next time. Bye for now.